should have some volume now.
All right. Go ahead and call this Proprietary Funds Budget Workshop to order. We have one item on the agenda, and I'm going to pass it right on over to Dallas. Take it away.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Commissioners. As the Mayor mentioned, we're here to discuss your proprietary funds for the fiscal year 2025 budget. I'll give a caveat that I had meant to spend all day yesterday preparing this PowerPoint, and then some unexpected events occurred. So if there's any typos, or please give me grace. As a reminder, when we talk about our proprietary funds, that includes your enterprise funds, which are primarily your utilities, electric, water, wastewater, mosquito control. Those are funds which generate their revenues through charges for services to customers. And then we have our internal service funds, which are funds that provide services to your city itself. So your utility administration fund, customer service, and the VERF, which is your vehicle and equipment replacement fund. So we'll be focusing primarily on your enterprise funds this evening. So, a couple of assumptions, important factors as we discuss the proposed budget tonight. As always, we strive to establish utility rates that generate revenue sufficient to maintain the utility system and to provide the lowest, most competitive rates possible. We are seeing operational pressure on the expense side, again, driven by inflation as well as renewal requirements in our wastewater system. In our electric system, we have some increases for our future capital projects as well as some debt capacity issues. Depreciation we'll talk about a little bit later tonight, but our depreciation expenses continue to outpace the annual increases in our rates, primarily by development. When developers build a system, they give it to the city and then we're required to depreciate it. And then, of course, we have operational rate increases, expense increases in our property liability insurance, utilities, audits, pensions, staffing, all those good things have put additional pressure on the budget this year. So high-level overview of what we'll be discussing tonight is we are proposing an electric rate increase of 2%. However, we will have a power cost adjustment reduction, which will result in a net decrease for most of our residents' electric bills. Proposing a 6.5% water rate increase, a 10% wastewater rate increase. We'll have a discussion about development fees for your water wastewater system, increase there. As I mentioned, we'll have a discussion about depreciation, and then we'll talk about capital improvement as well. So moving into some of the major projects that are coming up, there's nothing in this next section that's a surprise to the Commission. You've heard of all these projects before. So we have a variety of long-term projects that we're in the process of that require us to forecast revenues into the future and make sure we have a budget to fund these projects. Of course, we have the State Road 26 project, the elevated storage tank, we have a lift station relocation, small wastewater treatment plant expansion, we have staffing needs, and then, of course, the ongoing expansion and enhancement of our utility system, as well as a public works compound planned. And then, as noted on the bottom here, most of these will require the city to issue debt if we want to proceed with these projects. So the first is the DOT project. The DOT project is coming closer and closer. If you look in your capital improvement plan that was provided, I don't have a copy of, but looks like City Manager Vanna White is showing to you. Yes, sir. You'll see that there are a number of projects in this year's budget, starting in this year's budget, to move our utilities and begin the process of preparing the city for the State Road 26 expansion.
Dallas.
Yes, sir.
It doesn't have anything to do with the budget, but while we're on, there's a rumor going around town that FDOT has changed the roundabout down there at 337. Is there any truth to that, or still a planned roundabout? Roundabout. I haven't heard anything, but I've had 3 or 4 residents say, have you heard they're not doing roundabout anymore? And I've said, I haven't heard that. So, okay.
We've met with them as recently as DOT as recently as the last 2 or 3 months.
No.
There's been no conversation about that.
Just curious.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. So that's about $10 million in projects. We expect DOT will provide about $6 million of those costs for $4 million in Newberry costs. When you look at your CIP, you'll notice that we've budgeted the full amount because we have to expend the full amount, and then DOT will pay us back. These numbers are moving. We continue to go through the design phase. Jamie's working with engineers every day to hone those numbers and get our final designs.
I just wanted to share, because we're reviewing the presentation today, I have been surprised at how gracious FDOT has been with interpreting things in Newberry's favor in terms of cost share. So I'm not suggesting that we're getting it for free, but to date, when there's an opportunity to see things Newberry's way, FDOT has done so, and I've been pretty appreciative of that. It's not been hard negotiations to get to the point that we are today. That, the rubber's going to meet the road sometime in the future when you guys will see agreements that will say exactly what they'll fund, and I may be singing a different story then, but to date it's been very amicable, very partnership-like with FDOT to move this project forward.
See how the agreements turn out first. Elevated storage tank, as the commission knows, we're currently in design on the elevated storage tank out near Tanglewood. It says we're seeking SRF funding for planning document. We're actually have moved past that. We're now seeking SRF funding for the construction phase. The SRF hearings are actually 2 weeks from tomorrow, so we should know for sure what's going on with that. Estimated cost is $6.3 million. And we have proposed funding through the SRF program. We did receive a grant from the state, and then we're using your ARPA funds as well to fill in the gap there. Wastewater treatment plant. You may have heard we're building a wastewater treatment plant expansion. It's in the same place as the water tower pretty much. We're waiting on SRF funding. Again, that's on the August 14th SRF hearing, so we'll know what SRF is going to provide us in terms of funding. And then, of course, we have a $49 million grant application to the state that we're waiting on hearing back from. Current estimated cost on that is between $75 and $100 million. Utilities and Public Works Operations Center, planning to move out of the yard that we currently have.
Is there anything that we can send a love letter to the hearing from a commissioner's seat that
For the SRF hearing, their decision's basically been made. At the SRF hearing, they will just read the decision that they've already made.
Oh.
Yep.
The $49 million grant application, we can continue to advocate both with our local representatives, Representatives Clemens or his successor, and Senator Perry and his successor, and Senator Bradley. We have been doing that, but I think that the real time to seek their assistance is going to be between October the 1st and December the 1st, when FDEP will be considering that grant application. It is a sizable ask. I'll remind the commission that this was the #1 rated project to come out of the Water Management District. They didn't attempt to fund it because they don't get anywhere near $49 million worth of funding, but they identified our project as their highest priority and recommended to the state. Water Management District. Suwannee Water Management District. We applied, we're not St. John's, we're Suwannee. We applied for a grant through one of their grant programs, and like I said, they've identified it, highly prioritized it. They just don't have the funding in their program for our project, so they pushed it on to the state with a recommendation to fund it. So just to give you the backstory.
The Utility and Public Works Operations Center, as I mentioned, we're planning to move out of the yard. Once the State Road 26 project happens, the yard will essentially front State Road 26, and so we think there's a better higher use for that property on our main corridor. So we have plans to move the utility compound out to the wastewater plant. It's planned for 3 to 6 years out and be about $2 to $2.5 million. Any questions on those projects? So my big question is, how do we pay for all of that? So moving straight into infrastructure funding and development fees, The commission may remember that back in February, I gave you a brief update at the city commission meeting on our water wastewater development fees. As the commission knows, our development fees are very similar to your impact fees. We collect them to offset the cost of new development and new utility infrastructure based on growth. Those fees are collected on an equivalent residential unit for both water and wastewater. They're required to be spent on expansion and enhancement of your utility system. Such projects as the wastewater treatment plant, State Road 26, the water tower, oversizing projects, new force mains, water mains, those sorts of things. Commission first adopted these fees back in 2005. You last increased them in 2022. At that time, you directed staff to complete a rate study and see what the consultants think that the rate should be at. We did complete that study. Currently, our total impact fees are just over $5,000. The study came back, they suggested they'd be $14,000 or a $9,000 increase. Staff is not recommending you implement a $9,000 increase today, but if you do the pure math of the cost of our infrastructure divided by the number of equivalent residential units it serves, those would be the numbers. There's some further math in the PowerPoint if you want to see how they actually drive those numbers.
Can you go back to one slide? So we're talking about we don't call them impact fees.
Development fees.
These are development fees, but we don't have to do a study to adopt these. We've already done the study.
You did do the study, so you could adopt up to the 14,000.
Now we're just talking about the rate that we go within what has already been approved.
Correct.
Okay. Do you want to stop here and have this conversation?
I have a couple more slides on this section.
Okay, go ahead.
So we have the water development fee. This is how they calculated it. Same with the wastewater, if the commission wants to look at it. Staff's recommendation is to increase both the water and the wastewater development fees by 12.5%. That'd be about a $111 increase on your water development fee, $519 increase on your wastewater development fee. As a reminder, both of your development fees are pledged revenues on your SRF loans as well as some other loans you have. We also recommend that we reevaluate these fees annually. In fact, your ordinance says we're supposed to. And then as a point of reference, the city of Alachua is increasing theirs this year, 7% in water and 5% in wastewater. And then here's a chart that the consultant came back with. The first bar there is what would happen if you adopted your full increase. The red line is where you currently are. The very hard to see blue horizontal line is where staff is recommending you increase them to this year.
The dotted red line?
The dotted red line is where you're currently at.
What is the gold here? Is that where, I thought that was where we currently were.
The gold would be water, and then the dark blue would be wastewater.
Okay.
I will also mention these numbers are over a year old, so many of these cities have probably increased theirs. For example, I know City of Alachua has increased theirs.
Are development fees regulated like impact fees? You can only go up 12.5% a year? Or once you've done the study, you could go all the way to 14,000 if you wanted to?
Correct. It's the same law of impact fees applies to development fees. So because you have done a study, you could go up to the $14,000 a year. You could go up $14,000 this year. We'd have to step it in. I forget what the exact step in is. But you can always go up 12.5% without a study.
So staff is recommending 12.5. Why? Why not 14?
Well, we don't want to shock the development community. We don't want to go from a $5,000 fee to a $14,000 fee. We anticipate that we'll be doing an increase every year going forward. Historically, we haven't been very good at amending our development fees annually.
Okay, so any more or do you want?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so be 12.5. It mirrored the impact fees. That's my question. I'm not suggesting we go all the way to 14, but it seems like we're pretty far behind also. So, commission good with 12.5 staff's proposal? You want to give some feedback now? My feel of the community is that they are looking for developers to pay a greater portion of the cost of development. So I think the 12.5 is an easy ask. We also have a $50 million wastewater to build.
Yeah, and that the $50 million wastewater is included. Well, at the time we thought it was $47.7 million.
Yeah.
But it was included in the
60
study.
million now? 75?
Engineer's estimate's
By the
80
time I
to
finish this conversation, be 80? Yeah. Commissioner Coleman? 14% or 14,000?
14,000.
Okay, I got one person that wants to go all the way up.
Second.
Monty wants to go all the way up to 14. I agree that that's a pretty big increase. But I also think that's exactly where our community is. They want to see the developers paying more of the share. Commissioner Martin, you got a thought on this conversation?
A third.
Third to go up. Dallas, before, how about you take that preliminary feedback that you just heard, and let's run some numbers about, if we do the 12.5, where's that put us? If we go up, 15%, 20%, all the way,
It's only gonna be $500.
well, 12.5 is the $500, right? That's what you got. Yeah, 12.5 is $500
On
Which-
the wastewater side.
on the wastewater side. And on the water side, it's $100. So, I mean, that seems like that's in the noise. So I agree that it should be, if the commission wants to go to the full, then I'm not, that's y'all's decision. Seems like we need maybe like a 50%.
Mr. Mayor,
100%.
I believe, and I'll have to go back and reread the statute, but there are limits on how much you can go. If you adopt the 14, you can only go up 50% the first year and subsequent, but I'd be happy to bring those numbers back to you at the
And I think
the
what
wrap-up workshop in 2 weeks. 3
we'd
weeks.
like to see is, a step-in process to get us there, right? Whether that's step in over 3 years or 10 years, right? But how do we,
It sounds like they've built in the 14 to step in.
if you go to the 14, there's only so much you can go each year to get there. And then you guys would decide if you want to get there in the shortest number of years or you want to span it out a little bit more. And you don't remember,
Not well enough to quote it.
There's 3 votes that already said it goes shortest, so.
yeah. Okay.
I'll
so
bring back more information at the next workshop.
And I'd like a little bit of, it doesn't have to be comprehensive, but, how helpful is that in these projects that we're trying to get to, right? Because $600 more isn't helping us get these projects done. If you stick to doing it every year, then in 10 years it is, but some of these projects are within the next 5 years, so. Okay, all right, that was quick and easy, move on.
All right. Moving into depreciation, this next section is just more for the commission's knowledge and to be thinking about. Historically, the commission has had a policy that we should fund our depreciation fully through our utility rates. Just so the commission knows, within the last 10 years, the amount that we have to depreciate annually has more than doubled, from $600,000 to $1.2 million. Once we build the wastewater treatment plant, if you take the best case scenario that comes in at $60 million, 30-year useful life, that would increase our wastewater depreciation by $1.7 million annually. Our current wastewater budget is $1.9 million in total. So as I mentioned, your current policy is that we fund depreciation 100%, or best we can. However, with the addition of the wastewater plant, we're going to essentially more than double our budget in depreciation alone. So we just want to put it out there that the commission should consider changing its philosophy on funding depreciation 100%, or come up with a different methodology for determining what that 100% funding is. Our base case scenario would be a $2.3 million increase in depreciation just for the wastewater treatment plant alone. So,
It's getting expensive to be in utility business these days. Changes that we're seeing in the last 3 years are nothing I've ever seen before. Seeing our depreciation go up, typically a depreciation amount goes up maybe 5% annually. Talking about a 100% increase in 1 year, that's catastrophic. And to Dallas' points, it more likely warrants a discussion about policy than it is trying to adhere to our existing policy, which is fully funding depreciation.
all righty, so now we get into the actual budget parts.
Go ahead. I thought it was a question.
So in our electric operations, no major changes. We actually have a slight decrease in your operating expenses due to some one-time projects this year. We do anticipate lower purchase power costs next year based off of FMPA's projections. So with that, we're able to lower the PCA, provides a little bit of rate relief to the customers. We do have a proposed 2% increase in rates across all classes. Again, with the PCA reduction, though, it is actually a slight reduction. There is one new full-time position included in the budget, and that is a lineman position. And then just for the commission's knowledge, in the electric system, you don't have development fees. You don't have any sort of mechanism to fund expansion of the system. So your net operating income at just shy of $100,000 is what goes to fund those expansions of your system when needed.
Dallas, on electric operations, so, I don't know, 10 years ago, we embarked on mutual aid agreements so that if we got our guys, our city back up and running, and we had the time, we could go help other people, right? So I think that, hey, hang on, now there's people here that we're gonna give those to, so. Put them down on the, here, we'll finish it later. So we got the mutual aid agreements. Now I think there's a state law that kind of opened the door for that anyway. But do we have it built in? Because it feels like we're missing either some equipment, or gloves, or shirts, or whatever it is that we need, so that if we have a neighborhood that's down inside our municipal borders, we can go help them. So I don't know if that's a big budgetary expense, if that's a little budgetary expense, maybe Jamie could speak to that better, but I'd like that in this year's budget so that when we get our guy, our city back up and we've got time, we're not going, far away when we've got a neighborhood that's still out because we don't actually have the equipment and they can't share the equipment with, and I don't even, my goal, and I think the commission's goal, is that we get everybody in Newberry back up and running before we send anybody far away. So whatever is involved in that, I thought it was just the mutual aid agreements, but apparently there's different technical systems, there's different equipment that you need. So whatever we need to be able to serve any existing company inside the city of Newberry, I'd like that in the budget.
Sure. A couple comments to that. The first is we don't get to decide where our mutual aid crews go. So even if a local company is requesting mutual aid,
That was going to be my second comment.
we don't get to decide.
Right.
Who
I want
gets
to go
it?
back to those mutual aid agreements, because we had asked for that to be in the mutual aid agreement, that we get preferential treatment, that if there's a neighborhood in our city that's down, we get to serve them before Duke sends us, 50 miles away, right?
Mr. Mayor, we can
do
certainly have
the
those
equipment
conversations.
first.
It's a statewide mutual aid agreement that everybody signs the same one. They're always going to send the crews to the areas that need the service the worst. I'll let Jamie speak to whether or not we have the equipment. But as I mentioned, it's not usually up to the city or even the mutual aid. It's up to EOC and the state mutual aid as to where those crews get dispatched. But
And while Jamie's coming, I'll just mention our ability. We're sending 2 linemen this week to help, which is huge for us. In the past, we didn't feel like we could do that. But we don't make a significant enough impact to our neighbors for them to give us special treatment or to say, demand that our crews stay in our city limits. I'll let Jamie speak. He understands it better than I do.
So, Mr. Mayor, we do have the equipment needed to assist Central Florida Electric Co-op, which we have done in the past, and we have assisted Clay Electric Co-op, City of Tallahassee, currently assisting GRU today. Part of the issue is when they do their assessment for restoration, regardless of which electric system it is, they concentrate, and I mentioned it to Commissioner Martin in an incidental conversation earlier, they concentrate on working in the area where they can get the most people on at one time, and especially with what they call non-native crews, because if you're not an employee of that system or native to that system and understand it, they have to send resources with you to bird dog and tell you which pieces to turn on, this, that, and the other. So It all depends on the size of outage within the city limits of Newberry, is whether they would allow our employees to work a project on Central Florida Electric or Clay's, and the amount of people that were out, if that makes sense.
I mean, all of that makes perfect sense. It just seems like, I agree with Mike. We've got, two guys in a truck. In the time it takes us to drive an hour somewhere and then get fed in, those guys could go to Newberry Hills and probably get Newberry Hills back up and running. But that may be my ignorance of electric utilities. So I guess the first thing is, do we have the equipment? I know we got equipment for CFC. Do we have the right equipment for Clay and Duke?
We haven't worked on Dukes, and I believe the equipment we have is sufficient for their distribution voltage. But it's not just about sending the two linemen from City of Newberry to Newberry Hills. It's also the fact that they would have the bird dog here, where if he was with a group of 20 crews, he could serve that area if they were working a large outage. And it's the materials, it's their personnel bringing the transformers, bringing the poles, bringing, that sort of thing. So and we wouldn't, with a mutual aid crew coming into us, we wouldn't want a crew working off in an island unto themselves. We would want the work planned to get the largest amount of customers on in the least amount of time.
For the materials, is it possible for us to supply the materials and just send them a bill later and say, hey, we gave you 3 poles and a transformer?
Sometimes we do supply.
Part of these questions, it sounds like we got some lobbying in Tallahassee to do on these mutual aid agreements, because if the state law overrides it, I just need to understand better. So when people message me and say, I don't understand, I see that we're helping, Live Oak or Tallahassee, and Newberry Hills is still without power, I need to be able to explain better why that is. So I think part of it is equipment, part of it is lobbying in Tallahassee, but maybe you can ponder on it. We can have another conversation so you can educate me better on this as well, so we can figure out, is there a solution here, or is it just too big of a beast? Commissioner Bard.
Jamie, what I'm hearing is that we kind of get overrid by Tallahassee and the EOC kind of requirements, standards, to where our immediate priorities may be, trumped by a bigger city that's got more people out in the interests of greater public good, I suppose.
Well, to a point, Commissioner, so when they do mutual aid calls, they assign, first come, first serve crews to different utilities. There's been times when, we've offered to help Central Florida Electric, and they had enough non-native crews, and we helped someone else. Quite frankly, the time we went to Tallahassee, the crews we had released that we had reserved to help us if we were impacted, they went and helped Central Florida Electric, so they were from all the way in Alabama, and once they went to help Central Florida Electric, they didn't need my 2-man crew with 1 bucket truck, but Tallahassee did. So we went to Tallahassee. But the mutual aid agreements are not just statewide agreements. There's now a national agreement, and there's basically standard terms in there. And, we can explore it to whatever level the commission would like to. But as a employee of the City of Newberry Electric System, if a crew told me I'll only help you if, we're allowed to work where we want to work, I probably wouldn't take them. I'd take another crew that will work where I needed them the worst.
Well, and again, I don't want the message to be that, but I do want the message to be, our preference is to try to get our own city back up and running first. And if we can help there, and so somewhere in the black and white, I'm only going to work where I want to work, and we want to prioritize our own residents, is where I'm trying to get to.
And we've shared that with Central Florida Electric, and they're open to that. When we helped them the last time, we told them if they did not need us working in the city limits of Newberry based on priority, we wanted to be, because at that time I only had 3 line workers, we wanted to be where if we had an issue here, that we could be back to our customers within an hour or less. we didn't want our response time on our system to suffer because we were across the country. So we have expressed that to Central Florida Electric, and we, I believe, did express that to Clay the one time we've helped them in the past.
And only immediate question, before we pass this budget, if there's anything that needs to be in the budget in terms of equipment so that we could service, because we have Clay, Duke, Central Florida, do we have like 5 GRU customers? No GRU customers, so
Two
those-
Duke,
2 Duke
and then the rest are Central Florida.
and Clay. So if there's any equipment that we need to get so we can say, we've got what we need to serve to help you, bring it forward so we can talk about it.
We currently have what
Everything we
we need.
Okay, all right, thank you so much. Dallas, get us back on track.
I'll do my best. One final thought on that, just, I've gotten some messages on Facebook, just for the commission's knowledge. We do bill for mutual aid, so the city of Newberry is not paying for those resources that are helping other communities. They file FEMA reimbursements and they pay us for our time. Okay, so moving into the rates, as I mentioned, we're proposing a 2% increase for all customer classes, including streetlights. The average impact for a customer will be $2.35. However, we do have a proposed power cost reduction of 0.00306, which will, that's the accountant in me, I got to read the number, which will reduce the bills by $3.06. So the net impact would be a reduction of 71 cents per month on our average electric customer's bill. And these rates do balance your budget and provide for financial feasibility for future debt issuances. The biggest debt issuance that is coming into your electric system would be the second feeder.
So why increase the rate?
Because you need the rate increase to balance your budget and so that we have enough debt capacity for your
But
future
if you're going to
projects.
decrease the,
Is your microphone on, Monty?
The power cost adjustment portion only goes to pay for fuel. So we can't use the rate increase to pay for fuel and vice versa. So we're increasing the rate, that portion goes to fund your operations. If we reduce your fuel cost or increase your fuel cost, we can only use that portion to pay the FMPA bill. So we can't use any of those funds to pay your actual operations of the system. So the 2% will pay your operations of your system while reducing the customer's bill for the fuel side.
Clear as mud.
Here's where you were as of June. City of Newberry's electric rates were literally right in the middle of the pack at the municipal average. So we are right in the middle of the pack according to everybody else and lower than all the IOUs in the state and most of the other municipalities. Fun fact, GRU does not have the highest rates in the state anymore. It's Ocala, Duke, and FPU. In your water operations, we're proposing a 6.5% rate increase. There is no new staff requested. We did have a small bump in other revenues for the water tower lease with Verizon. So this 6.5% rate increase brings you essentially at a net zero in your proposed budget for 2025. Again, proposing a 6.5% increase for all customer classes. That's an average impact per resident of $2.26 per month based on 8,000 kgal bill, and that would give us the second lowest rates in our peer group. This is our peer group, so just above City of Alachua, lower than Gainesville, lower than High Springs, and lower than the 2022 state average. So in 2022, the state average for an $8,000 water bill was $41.72. If you increase that by the Public Service Commission CPI to current rates, the average in the state of Florida would actually be $46, and our rates would be $36. So we're about $10 less than the average water bill throughout the state of Florida. Moving into your wastewater operations, proposing a 10% rate increase for all customer classes. Again, that brings you essentially flat. There was an FTE requested in this department for a wastewater system operator. However, that position was cut from the budget, as we do not think we have rate capacity to fund that position. Note on that, though, is as the commission may remember, we were attempting to hire one new person every year until the wastewater plant came on to meet the additional staffing requirements. So this effectively is deferring that step-in plan by a year. So we will have to hire this person at some point. And then just a note for last year, because the negative number looks really scary, we did plug that number with some of your non-operating interest income last year. So for your existing and proposed rates, again, it's a 10% increase in wastewater rates. Average impact per customer is $7.09 for an 8,000 kgal bill. And again, we maintain the second lowest rates in our peer group. One thing to mention as part of the reason our cost went up so much this year, we had an audit on our insurance insurance property listing and found that a number of our lift stations were undervalued. So we had a significant increase in property values in our wastewater system, which drove our insurance rates up. So again, we have the second lowest rates in the area, just above the city of Alachua, but lower than Gainesville and High Springs. We are higher than the 2022 average bill for the state of Florida, but again, if you increase that by the CPI that the state has published, that number would actually be $72 for the average bill in the state of Florida, and we're at $69, so again, below the state average in wastewater.
And Dallas, I'd just point out for the commission's edification, because it's probably been a while since we said it, we use 8,000 as a benchmark because that is the state average. That's the industry average for benchmarking. The average customer in Newberry is closer to 6,500 gallons. So, and because they're billed on a per gallon basis, average customer in our system does not pay $70 a month. It would be prorated back to about 6,500 gallons, which is probably in the low 50s.
Okay, so a summary across all the utilities, your electric system, small decrease, water system, $2.25 increase, wastewater, $7 increase, for a grand total of $8.64. I asked ChatGPT to make me an image of what you can buy each month for $8.64. It did a terrible job and came up with this image that includes things like a few food coffee. So you can buy a few food coffee. And then no matter what I did, it kept thinking I said $88.64. But it is correct that for $8.64, you could buy a streaming service, a cup of coffee, a fast food meal, a basic phone plan, and a small plant. So there's the glory of AI for you.
It's a working intelligence. It's learning. Yeah, it'll take over the world in give it 10, 20 years. Yeah. Right now, it's still struggling.
So again, for commission considerations, we have a small rate increase in electric, 2%, 6.5% rate increase in water, 10% rate increase in wastewater. Discussion on development fees forthcoming. As I mentioned, long-term, need to have a discussion on the commission's policy in terms of depreciation. And then we do have a very healthy capital improvement program, not including the wastewater plant. There's $15 million in capital improvements planned in your utilities next year.
Dallas, development fees can only be spent towards new capital projects, or can they be spent on operations?
They can only be spent on expansion of the system.
So you can't spend development fees to offset increases in operations, but
No,
you
sir.
can spend them to build new infrastructure.
Expansion and enhancement. So they're primarily a pledge towards your debt service for your SRF loans, and then we have an ongoing program every year for expansion enhancements, upgrades to existing systems.
So the development fees would really only speak towards helping us hit the debt service agreement. It's not gonna, you can't say, well, you increase the development fees, so you can't go up by 2% on the electric, because the 2% on the electric is primarily operational expenses, cost of living. There may be something in there that you could, but you're mainly thinking about debt service.
Yeah, correct. We're mainly thinking about capital projects.
Right.
Mostly the debt service is because the capital projects are large these days and we need upfront cash. But you're correct. They're like the impact fees on your streets and roads and public buildings. They cannot pay for operations, can only pay for capital. And that concludes my presentation.
Commissioner Martin?
Dallas, a good number of the new homes coming online are not in our service territory, correct?
No, I would
mean,
say the majority of them are connected to our water wastewater system. and
Okay,
our
just not,
electric
I'm
system.
thinking power, I guess, right?
Avalon Woods
Okay.
is in our electric territory. They're the majority of new homes for the past 3 years.
Oh, they are,
Countrywood
okay.
Town Center is all in our electric territory.
Town Center
Okay.
is,
Oak Park should be, right?
Oak Park was.
is, and Weststone will be.
Okay. What kind of picture do we have looking forward as far as trying to spread out some of the fixed costs, I guess, over over getting, new customers? Do we have an idea where the new where that's going to help or hurt us one way or the other? Does that make sense? Like we have fixed costs. As we're getting more customers, we can help distribute some of those fixed costs over those new customers, but is that actually happen in practice, or what's that picture kind of look like for
By
us?
and large, if you look at our electric bills, let's say you get a bill for $100, the city's only getting a quarter of that for our operations, even really less than a quarter, maybe about 20 cents. So those increases of new houses have not really overcome the cost of inflation, the cost of adding new staff, the equipment and depreciation that we now book. It either breaks even or maybe just a little bit below. Because now, once we build those houses, and we have those on our system, now we have that entire electric system that we also have to depreciate every year and spread those fixed costs through.
For
The
our
Publix will help.
Publix will help, but for large expenses, Dallas is planning that we take debt service, which is the best way to spread it over future ratepayers that are connected to our system. They're going to get the benefit. They're also going to be contributing to the fund that makes debt service payments into the future.
Very similar to your property taxes, where residential doesn't really net you any gains, but commercial has a higher load impact, is where you see the gain on your financial side.
Right. And I mean, I think that right there has been one of the driving motivations, I guess is the word, for this commission over the last few years about pushing the commercial. But we've been playing this game of chicken between having enough rooftops to warrant and to attract those businesses. I just hope we're getting there soon.
Well, that's why I
Yes.
think the conversation about the development fees going to the debt service is important, because the operating costs, we're either breaking even or we're losing a little bit. But there is nothing there to move the city yard out there for $2.5 million. There is nothing there for a $5 million, lift station. So when we go to pay for those things through debt, how are we going to make the debt service? Because we're never going to have $20 million just sitting there to write the check, right? So how are we going to make that service? We're having the same issue when it comes to 46, right? There's no other funding source for Southwest 46 other than millage. So having a conversation when we talk about the development fees about how much does it actually move the needle, right? Where do we have to get to where it's making an impact, so that when you guys say, yeah, it's time, the city yard is right there on New Newberry Road, that should be something that's a downtown driver. It shouldn't be a city yard. We've got a way to pay that debt service, Commissioner.
And I don't think the message is obviously that we want to increase rates, at all. I don't think any of us want to do that. I think the only position that we're left in is trying to figure out the best way to deal with it, more than anything, because so much of this stuff is out of our control. I don't like, and we've said before, we don't like trying to put some of this stuff off and then having significant jumps to cover it. And I think that is the best thing that we can do. And then again, not that any of us like it, but it's kind of the hand that we're dealt at the moment. Well, not really at the moment. That's just kind of our day-to-day at this point.
Mr. Mayor?
Answer his question, then we'll go to Commissioner Coleman. Can you hold it?
Yeah.
Don't forget. No. Can you hold it? Could you probably
I can hold it.
You go, Commissioner Coleman, and then Dallas will respond to both.
I was just gonna add on to, a lot of this debt that we're incurring, just like with the Twin Pairs, we don't have a choice. We have to. I mean, how much was that again? I can't, we're
Twin
going to,
pairs is, the city will pay 4 to 5 million.
4 to 5 million that, hey, guys, you gotta pay it, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I was.
And the twin pairs will be an investment. It will provide a 40 or 50-year benefit to our downtown, but the community commission has to look at it as an investment. We'd prefer not to do it, but, you know, the project is here and there'll be benefit from the project, and this is just one of the costs that come with it.
No, I mean, I think Commissioner Coleman is out there. We have to have a wastewater, right? Our permit's
Yeah,
up in
exactly.
26, right? When you flush the toilet, it's got to go somewhere, right?
And how much more is that debt?
Yeah. And the
You
two-way
gotta have.
the two-way pairs, I've got more people saying, man, this road out here is, we can't get across it anymore, right? So it's about the timing, but none of these projects are, I just want this. They're all, they're have-tos, you know?
You hear a lot of people say they want the city to invest in infrastructure, and this is how you do it.
Right.
I took notes on one so I wouldn't forget.
So when are the twin pairs supposed to be
Want it for a little
implemented?
bit longer.
2027.
I keep saying 20, I'm gonna speak it into
Yeah.
existence. I want it in 26.
Say Pentecost.
Started then.
2.5-year project. It'll finish in 2030.
So they break ground in 27, huh?
Are they into 26? Just keep saying.
And if you're not,
December 31st.
if you're not a commissioner, we'll still have you a shovel and a hard hat out there.
Yeah. We had them all the way up to 25 at one point in time, then it fell back to 27.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's possible. We'll just keep pushing. All right, now Dallas, respond. You made your notes.
None of my comments may make any sense anymore, but just for the commission's edification, you know, you're not in the, you're in the same boat as a lot of municipalities around here. We are facing more because our permit was just renewed and we have higher requirements, but the city of Alachua is increasing its rates 7% this year, and High Springs is increasing their rates 8% this year, and their 8% increase is not covering their cost. So we are in the same boat in terms of rate increases as some of our peers. On debt service, there's a concept that you may be familiar with of intergenerational equity, where you don't want everybody who lives in Newberry today to pay for infrastructure that's going to last 30 years. When you issue debt service and you have 30 years of payments, you are spreading that cost out amongst people over 30 years. So the people who live here in 20 years are paying their fair share, and it's not on the people who live here today. That's that fancy master's degree at use.
I don't even have one. I knew what that was.
Yeah. Well, the intergenerational equity, I think, was the commission's concern about taking the 30-year debt,
Money's benefit.
the 30-year debt for 46. So if the commission can become more comfortable with a road being good for 30 years, then taking debt for 30 years makes sense. If a road is good for 20 years, taking debt for 30 years, it's a harder pill to swallow.
Yeah, you should
But
never
I
issue
abs-
debt for longer than the
Yeah,
life of
we've always taken the intergenerational equity, because it wouldn't be fair for everybody to pay today for a waste service, and then somebody 50 years from now gets it for free, right?
Absolutely. And then my last point is just when speaking about incentivizing non-residential growth, when thinking about increasing our water and wastewater development fees, those are the exact same development fees that non-residential pays. So we apply those same costs based off of ERUs. Jamie, do you remember how many ERUs Publix was? Let's say 10 for conversation. So, for example, if Publix was 10 ERUs, their impact fees for water, wastewater would, instead of $50,000, be $140,000. So it is something to consider when discussing increasing your development fees, as that does equally impact the non-residential commercial side. That was
Okay, any other questions or comments on proprietary funds?
I do.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
Is moving the Public Works Department a necessary thing?
I'll defer to the manager and Jamie.
I would say yes, but
When the Twin Pairs is constructed, actually First Avenue, as you see it today in front of the power plant, won't exist. That will actually be the terminus where it starts to flare off the railroad right away in 2337, to be able to get across there with pole trucks, delivery trucks, motor graders, things of that nature is going to be tenuous at best, especially with the short segment between the east and the westbound segments. I do believe, as Dallas alluded to earlier, that that will now become more prime real estate, whether you turn it into a private concern or that is your long-term home possibly for your Newberry Police Department when that comes to fruit. There's all kinds of options, but I don't know that we will be able to operate as we do there today with that being a very slow, lazy, local street versus having, 4 lanes of traffic with that short segment in between.
Yeah.
Why is Lotchaway's rates so much cheaper than ours?
They have a sweetheart deal with GRU, where GRU is undercutting everybody else to sell Alachua power. They also get excess power from FMPA.
Well, GRU is one of the highest
Never
utilities.
said it made business sense.
GRU sells it at a loss. As if GRU sells that power at a loss to Alachua contractually. GRU is committed to pay for it. So if GRU is paying $135 a megawatt hour for that energy, they're selling it to Alachua for about $50 a megawatt hour. They see that as a victory for their customers who would have to pay the whole $135 if they didn't have a contract with Alachua. So they're willing to subsidize for Alachua in order to get some benefit for their customers.
Wow.
They're in a sweetheart deal.
So let's call GRU and see what we can do.
Got to make the Gainesville residents feel really good that GRU sells to Alachua cheaper than sell to their own too.
How much did we raise the water rates last year and the wastewater rates?
You raised wastewater by 10%. Well, I think it was 9.75% because the commission wanted us to stay cheaper than Alachua. Let me double check on the water real quick.
It was similar in magnitude, but we would also note that when Dallas was showing the municipal waste index, price indexing in the first workshop, that for the past 2 or 3 years, the municipal price index has been floating in that 8 to 10% range. And things like discovering that we hadn't been paying property insurance on 2/3 to 3/4 of our lift stations, while we saw some benefit the last couple of years when the insurance company discovered their error, that correction was a significant impact in the budget that we can't make go away.
Mr. Mayor, last year you increased your electric rates by 3% with no offset in PCA. You increased your water rates by 7%, and you increased your wastewater rates by 9.9%. The total impact per customer last year was $9.77 per month. This year it's proposed at $8.64 per month.
I can understand the cost of inflation. What I don't understand is how come we have to do a yearly increase of 10% on these things. I mean, it's starting to, in my opinion, starting to get a little out of hand.
Well, Mr. Mayor, as mentioned, again, we are right in line with the rest of our peers. As the manager mentioned, the insurance increase alone this year was $50,000 on top of all the other pressures. As you can see, we didn't increase personnel very much. Depreciation continues to be a pressure on us. And then, like I said, the cost of operating the system continues to go up. But I do understand the frustration.
And last year, my memory is getting fuzzy, but last year, all of our peer cities around us increased double, triple. High Springs millage rate went up by like 30%. Gainesville's millage rate. Yeah, so I mean, some of these numbers, they start to sound, but when you look at what the cities that are around us are doing, we're beating them by a long shot. And I mean, inflation this year was somewhere between 8 and 10% across the board. So we're staying right there where everybody else is playing catch up.
I've been on this dais for 13 years, and I cannot remember one time that we decreased. If I'm wrong, y'all let me know.
Decreased what? Because we decreased the millage.
No,
And,
no, I ain't talking about that.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
talking about
talking
water
Right.
and wastewater.
Yeah.
Every year.
But every year we also lose money.
Yeah, I know. That's what's so
That's
crazy.
what's crazy. Right? Your direction to city staff is to run these at a break even. We generally end up subsidizing because we're trying not to go up. But you guys don't subsidize near as much as the previous commission did. Previous commission
Oh, yeah.
subsidized quite a bit.
Yeah.
So now we're getting close to where everybody pays what it costs to give them the service.
Why don't we drop depreciation to about 60%?
I mean, talk to us about that, Dallas. Because we didn't fund depreciation at all when I first came in. It was like
Right.
a pittance. Then we funded it completely.
VERF didn't exist.
Yeah, MERF didn't exist, right? So Todd, what does that mean? What does it look like?
So we use depreciation annually for repair and maintenance of the system, capital upgrades to the system that development fees don't pay for. For a year or two, I don't think there is any harm in not funding your depreciation. Most communities throughout the state don't fully fund their depreciation. However, that depreciation is the mechanism that the city has to replace things. So you are using a good portion of your depreciation to replace the wastewater plant. When we need to replace a force main or we need to replace and upgrade a lift station, depreciation is where we get those funds from. So we don't have to raise rates in a single year for that. So in a year or two, there's no harm, but in the long run, you would be running out of that funding source for capital improvements to your system.
I mean, when I was in y'all's seat and we weren't funding at all, and that was the argument that I made. You're just delaying, right?
They're
You're kicking the
inevitable.
can. Yeah, so eventually, I mean, I remember we had to take out a loan my first year to replace a truck because it was a 30-year-old truck and there was no money to replace a truck, and now all of that is funded through depreciation so that when one wears out, the next one is funded, you're not taking out debt service.
Well, I just wonder what kind of savings is there if we drop it to about like 60%.
Give me a second.
Really, you that quick?
Excel
I figure you
sheets
say,
are-
hey, next meeting.
It's just gonna hurt when you go back up.
And I will attest that there is not a tighter tightwad that I've ever met than well, maybe Ben Buckner, but Jamie Jones is up there. So there is no frivolous spending occurring in your utilities.
He's fast, but he's not that fast. Go ahead, It's just a question for Dallas because he's badly punching that number.
no.
Dallas comes back
No.
and says 200 and something thousand, and I'm gonna say, let's do it.
I don't,
You could,
I mean, I don't want to come off the depreciation funding as it is right now, because, I can't stand kicking the can down the road. I mean, it's always going to bite you, and things are just going to continue to get more
I
expensive.
agree on that.
I do understand the need to have the conversation when it comes to, the wastewater and those sorts of things that you're talking about doubling that in the next, couple of years when those things come online. So, is there, So that money, so what happens to the money that's in the depreciation? Is it being invested? Are we making anything off it? Is that,
So we do invest all of your surplus funds. Obviously, our goal is not return, it's safety and liquidity of the funds. We're currently earning about 4% on those funds. I think last year we earned about $600,000 in interest.
Not by what the stock market's been doing.
Well, yeah, that's why none of your money's in the stock market. But yes, we are earning some interest on it. I mean, 4% is pretty good for government interest.
Did you have that number?
Yeah, I do have that number. Mr. Mayor, if you were to reduce your planned depreciation expense next year to 60%, you could maintain your rates at a no increase and break even. Caveat being, I am still required by GAAP and GASB to book your depreciation at 100%, and my CPA assistant finance director would yell at me if I didn't, and so would your auditors. So we will still have to book that depreciation at 100%. So your financial statements will show a loss based off that depreciation, but it's a number loss, not a cash loss.
I mean, the only way that I would argue to do something like that is if it's a one-time extraordinary thing and we need the money right there. Any other variation of this, we just get down to, we're just making it harder for the next commission to fund, to replace the stuff because we didn't fund the depreciation.
And I remember those days when I got in.
I mean,
It was terrible.
if you guys remember, we had to catch up because we weren't funding anything, so there was no money, and it's taken us a long time to get on an even keel like this. So, I mean, if it was a year or two because we had extraordinary costs, we thought that the world was going to go flat in a Great Depression, maybe, but at the end of the day, by putting that money there, if there is a Great Depression, you still have the money.
Is
right?
that money for, you can pretty much use it on anything, Dallas?
Mr. Mayor, so by policy, we only use it for replacement enhancement of the system. Legally, it is revenue of the system, and the city commission can use it for whatever purpose they choose.
Emergency situations is really what I was referring to. Yeah.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
The rate increases that you presented, were that just for residential or is that commercial too?
It's the same percentage increase across all
Is it?
classes. I just don't have slides breaking it out.
Is that normally how we do it?
In the past couple years, I haven't presented all the individual rate classes, but again, yesterday was taken off my calendar, but I don't think we've presented the individual rate classes in 2 or 3 years, just because like in electric, there's like 7 different rate classes, but they're all increasing by the same percentage.
And for residential rate classes, we do have very typical bills, but when you jump into commercial and industrial rate classes, there's nothing typical. We can't just put you up what the average increase would be for an industry. They're all over, it's all over the spectrum. Residential is very consistent.
Okay.
Just threw it out there.
I mean, it's always a good conversation, and I think that is an ace in the hole when you've got some sort of temporary emergency situation. But for long-term governance, it's just kicking the can.
For the commission's consideration, if you wanted to reduce your depreciation funding to 90% this year, you could reduce your rate increase to a 7% increase. And that would be the same as similar to what you're doing in water.
I think it's
That'd be
Yeah.
$50,000 that would come out of your depreciation fund.
I'll just remind, because not all y'all were up here, but when I think Tim and Rick, when we first got here, the fire department had a rock holding the door shut, right? Because we didn't have any depreciation. There was no long-term planning, right, going on. And so you guys in the past 12 years have had to not just govern, you've had to overcome what you inherited to get us to here, and it's taken a long time. And these kind of conversations that depreciation conversation, getting it passed the first time, that was tough. Commissioner Martin?
I guess just in wrap up, I suppose. I think the decisions that we're making here, what you presented, I think is the best you can do. It's defensible as far as I'm concerned, both politically, economically, managerially. Our job is to be at the front of the boat, looking over the horizon, doing the long-term planning. I know you guys are back at the rudder, kind of steering the ship on the day-to-day. This is the information that we pay for, so I appreciate you giving us a straight story.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Any other questions about
What's the next meeting?
the next
Next
workshop?
meeting is August 21st at 6:30, and that is a wrap-up. August 21st, I believe.
Is it gonna be,
28th, August 28th. But yeah, it's right after the groundbreaking for City Hall.
is this when you're, what is it, gonna discuss like raises and stuff like that?
We discussed raises briefly at the first workshop. There's a planned 2% COLA and then
That's right.
up to 4% merit, with no employee receiving less than 50% on the COLA, 50 cents on the COLA.
Hey, I got one more question, Mayor. Insurance, is it like, are we having problems? I mean, I was talking to a buddy of mine that owns a concrete construction company, and he said insurance is eating him alive right now.
So for, Mr. Mayor, for property and liability insurance, I believe is what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Last year, we had a really rough year due to the fact that Hurricane Ian had come through the year before and raised rates. I've gotten the preliminary increases from our insurance. So excluding the fact that we have a lot higher property values to insure in the wastewater system, we're only looking at about a 5% increase on property and casualty and about 2.5% increase on workers' comp.
Now, on the raises, in the first budget workshop, you mentioned the salary schedule. Is that the current existing salary schedule, or is that the salary schedule the commission tabled last year? Which salary schedule is
It's
in the budget this year?
Current existing with minor tweaks that we always do, excluding the compensation
So
study.
it's not the compensation
Not
study?
the compensation study.
Okay.
So we're
Was
going to
there-
take the existing one, increase it for the minimum wage. We always make sure that we're still competitive. So, for example, if wastewater technicians now make $25 an hour and we're only paying 15, we'll look at that. But the compensation study is not part of it.
Okay, and I knew that we got the part-time CRA.
It's a
It's a
full-time,
full-time job, but part-time on CRA, part-time on,
50% economic development, 50% CRA.
okay. And do we have somebody else coming in human resources to help out, to segue,
Finance and administration is getting half of a staff assistant,
right?
which will kind of help human resources, but there's no dedicated human resources person budgeted.
Okay, because I know that there's been some concern about because you're right now serving as our primary human resources and assistant manager. Is there somebody else in
We have a full-time
between?
human resources generalist who
Okay,
handles all the HR functions day to day, and then I kind of handle like big HR.
so if there's a employee complaint, they go to the generalist? Is there secondary person that's outside of management, that's kind of a
So your person,
objective person that's not writing the policy? They have somewhere that they can go to?
well, so the commission's adopted personnel policy prescribes how an employee would file a complaint. Ultimately, it is all underneath the city manager as the personnel officer. There is opportunity that if there is a complaint against the city manager, they can file a complaint with the city clerk or the city attorney. We also have an anonymous hotline that employees can call, but ultimately the personnel officer is the city manager, so it all falls underneath his jurisdiction.
Okay,
What about code enforcement?
Codes enforcement reports to the community development director.
Do we have?
We have a full-time codes enforcement officer. Her name is Greta. She is pretty good.
we've had turnover in that position, but
Yep,
it's
she's been
still
with
a
us about a
funded
month.
position.
I think.
Okay,
I want a meter. I want to run by our meter.
We can make that happen.
Have her come up here.
We'll introduce her. We'll introduce her at a meeting in the upcoming future.
And
really
we're on a super short budget. Last year, we had like 5 budget workshops. This is 3. Any questions from the first budget workshop to this budget workshop? We got one more to make sure we
We're
get
on the
them
same
all
time.
done.
When I was
We're on
working
the
on
same timeline.
this PowerPoint, last year we had this same meeting on the 4th of August, so we're doing pretty okay.
Mr. Mayor, when we were in the first budget workshop, it occurred to me that this 5-year CIP, we might be better off if we prepared a cheat sheet that just addresses this year. You know, Dallas just mentioned that we're doing, is it $15 million worth of projects?
In the utilities.
In the utilities area, that's not a wastewater plant. And before Thursday close of business, I'll prepare a 2 or 3 page highlights note of what we are proposing in this year's budget that would include what we're planning to do with personnel in terms of raises, what we're proposing to do in terms of new positions. Here are the projects that we have funded, because some of them are sexy and merit quite a bit of discussion, and some of them just don't. And we won't include every one. If it's a $20,000, we got to do it just to keep going business, we won't identify it. But if it's in the big, 5 or 6 projects for each area, we'll include it. Try to give you a Cliff Notes version of these are the essential elements or the important elements in this budget, so you'll have it for reference. And we'll continue to use that as we go through the remainder of the budget season.
I'm good.
Okay. Nothing left here? Okay, let's move to comments. Mr. Manager, you got any comments?
Mr. Mayor, only comments I have is that beginning next Monday, I'll be out of the office for 2 weeks. So Dallas and or Jamie will be assigned responsibilities. I'm available by cell phone, but not really. But if there's an emergency, feel free to give me a call, and I'll see you when I return. Looking forward to it. I sent a couple of emails this afternoon about upcoming agenda items. One is FDOT wants the city to meet with them to develop a landscaping plan for the Twin Pairs. It's the last thing we do. And so we're going to have a presentation later in August, discussion item at a city commission meeting to allow the commission to weigh in on what they're thinking. Typically, if it's more than grass and trees, then we're signing an agreement to do the maintenance of those landscaping throughout the corridor. Which is common. If you want a nice landscaping package, we should plan to sign up to pay for it. And all of the Twin Pairs project is within the CRA, and we could fund it utilizing revenues from our CRA.
Mike, on the landscaping package, the bulbs that come in at crosswalks that narrow your vision.
Sure.
Does that count as landscaping because you plant stuff in there? Or does that count as infrastructure, or is it a little bit of both?
If it's got plantings in it, it is part of landscaping.
Okay.
So, the sidewalks and the curbing and things of that nature are part of the construction plans. Hardscaping is what we'd call it, and it's not. But if there's an area for plantings in there, then it would be part of the landscaping plan.
In my mind, what I'm seeing is when you go into High Springs and it's on the other side of the railroad tracks, it's a good 5-6 feet bulb that kind of comes in. It's
Yep.
guttered, it comes down, and it really does narrow your vision, kind of slows you down there. So is that going to be part of this conversation?
No, those are already
Landscaping?
in there.
That's already in there.
That's already in there.
Okay.
This is just the planties in those
What goes
areas.
inside it? All right.
And then, Mr. Mayor, the second item was just something you're going to see on the next agenda. We proposed to put it on the consent. You'll remember that the commission voted to get out of the Whistling Duck solar agreement, which was a good move, and we've effectuated that, but it comes with an agreement. And I failed to ask that the motion include authorize the city manager to sign. So we're going to put that on the consent for next meeting. If you want to pull it, please do. If you have questions, please do. But that's coming back, just an error on my part. Didn't think it through well enough before we asked for a recommended motion. That concludes my comments, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk? Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Coleman?
I have nothing.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
I want to thank the Public Works Department for their fast
Saved your life.
response. The other day, the electricity went out of my house in that area, and someone was over there in about 10 minutes, and while they were working to restore it, a big old tree from property across the street fell. Thank God no one was injured,
Yeah.
you know, it was, but, and they had everybody come over and clear that road, so, very appreciative, and they did a great job.
Our team excelled.
They
really
did. Thank you, sir. Commissioner Martin?
Ditto, and I appreciate the late posting about the two guys that were helping over in GRU that showed up our GRU counterparts, shall we say, in helping a resident over there with something simple, but I'd sent an email back. I don't know if you've seen it. You can't train character in some people, and I mean, good for those guys. Thank you for making us look good.
Here. Commissioner Maison?
Yeah, I'm here. Been quiet all night, I'm here. I've been up since 4:30, mundane state, retaining everything. But 4th Ave looks good. 4th Ave looks really good. You know, at first, looking at it, some of the residents in Newberry place was like, is it going to be wide enough? And for a while, it didn't look like it was going to pan out, but it actually looks really good. So good job. The staff, good job with the hurricane, dealing with the hurricanes. And you actually posted it, but Jamie and I actually mentioned it to you when I delivered there that Publix gave you and Rance and the whole utility department a kudos for your involvement with making sure they got what they needed. Anybody following the Olympics this year at all?
To an extent.
We are number 1 right now in gold medals. Yes, we did. China actually has 22 gold medals. We have 24. We have 86 total medals, and China has 59. So we have 24 gold medals. We have 31 silver medals and 31 bronze medals. China has 22. They have 21 silver medals and 16 bronze medals. Australia falls in 3rd.
University of Florida has now has more than, what was the headline?
12.
More than like 17 countries, 12 countries? More than 12 countries, just the University of
I
Florida.
think most of them are in the pool.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess.
And
Well,
Gainesville
we're a
has-
water state, right?
Gainesville has over 11 because there are at least 3 medalists from Gainesville who are not UF.
And of course, we had, was it silver or bronze from Easton, the archers?
Archer,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Silver.
Two
Yeah.
silver.
Yes,
That's awesome.
yes. 2
Yeah,
silver.
I didn't mean to step, you were about to say that. I stepped right on
buddy,
it. Go
you
ahead.
added to the flame, man.
Yeah.
I did have a question. What about 15th Ave? When is that set to start?
We are finishing up the bid specs to put it out for bid right now. I'd say we've got 75% of the bid specs complete. We had some transition in project manager and in purchasing specialist. Both of them are coming up to speed very quickly, and we expect to put it out to bid within the next 60 days.
And that's a large enough project, Mike. We're not going to go through what we did with Fourth, where we had to bid it out 3 times to find somebody. That one's going to have a taker.
We
We're gonna-
anticipate that it
We're
will.
gonna call some
His
folks.
chair back there.
We're going to call some folks. They say, hey, we're putting this out. Yeah.
I would, just so you know that with Southwest Fourth, I would stun you with the number of vendors that I called and got assurances from that they
That they
were going
would.
to bid, and they still did.
Yeah.
So it's just a tough environment these days.
Hey,
Was that,
The date of when we put a bid in, from that date that we get a bid, when is the date to start construction?
when we award the bid from that moment? Because you guys will award the
bid
bid.
goes out for 60 days.
Bid goes out for something over 30 days, typically 45 to 60 days. When a bid comes back, it normally takes us about 30 days to get it reviewed and get it approved by the commission. And then we schedule notice to proceed. I mean, if they're ordering structures, it may be 90, 120 days before they begin work. We coordinate that, and we negotiate that with the contractor when they're going to mobilize to the site and begin work.
Remember, the conversation there is going to be, we want to mobilize either like the very first day of summer vacation and try to get, we're going to try to strategically point it in where it'd be the least amount, because it's going to be a disruption. There's no way around it. It's at
Agreed.
least a year, if not 18-month projects. There's going to be a disruption. Trying to figure out where we can start to mitigate that.
Hey, Coleman, I met Greta today. It's funny that you brought, it's funny that you brought it up because I was over at the Little Red School and I met up with her and just per like Scott Thomas here, she actually worked with Gainesville, City of Gainesville and the Alachua County, so she comes with a wide variety of knowledge in her field. So, and she's very nice,
And she's
hard worker.
Newberryan.
Yes, and she's a Newberryan. That's right. Yeah.
Last name is Moreau.
Moreau.
Don't you know her maiden name?
I do.
I was about to say, Miss Judy knew.
Somebody was a little girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I forgot Moreau, but I remember the maiden name, but now I
Billy's her
can't.
father's name, and Norma's her mother's name. Billy and Norma.
Oh, yeah, Billy and Norm.
Yeah. As soon as we walk out the door, Judy's going to text everybody and say, hey, Commissioner,
That works. Okay, there you go.
Commissioner Martin, did you think of something else?
Part of them Wilson.
You had started to reach, no? Lost?
Oh, the only thing I was thinking, it was really just a thought out loud about 15th, where a significant part of it's away from the school on the west end versus the east end. Not that we'll be able to work all that and then, in the spring and then do this during the summer and then be done at the end of summer, but I'm sure if we can, we will, right?
To the extent that we can, we will.
An extension to the worst road in the Alachua County.
15.
I don't know, 235 is fighting.
235 is fighting pretty hard.
And 94.
Yeah.
23rd Avenue.
Yeah.
221.
All right, let's go on, right? I just want to add I got so many comments on City of Newberry getting through the hurricane. Great job from top to bottom. I saw us responding to folks even on social media when they were having questions. Kudos to our residents. I saw a lot of folks get out with chainsaws and help their neighbors, and that's exactly what we want in a small town. Everybody's looking out for everybody. I also want to say thanks for Fourth. I know that Fourth was projected to get right up there where school was started, and we worked real hard with the contractor. So thank that contractor for working with us and our guys for making sure that we got it done even before the teachers came back. I talked to Bev, and she was very grateful. She was worried that no one was going to be able to get. Everybody worked with everybody and compromised so that we made the best of that situation, and we appreciate that. And Tony mentioned it, but we were up and took a tour of Publix, and these guys work all over the state. They work up into the southeast, and I always ask that question, how did we do? What was it like working in Newberry? And he said there was not one issue that he had, especially with the utility department, that our guys were meeting their needs before they actually needed them, so that now we are waiting on them to come and do the next step because they're behind. And he said he's never said that before. There's always something. There's a delay. There's somebody, but it was rave reviews. Never heard the like. And I just want to remind everybody, school starts on Monday, and as it's always amazing to me, the very first week of school, it's chaos, right? It is absolute chaos. Nobody knows where they're supposed to go. Nobody knows, right? Just seems to be more cars. So just leave a few minutes early, build that into your time. Because dropping kids off the elementary school, getting into Oakview, all of that, 2-3 weeks in, it seems to mitigate a little bit. It's not quite as chaotic, right? But just plan next week is going to be a little bit, plan that in. That's all my comments. Commissioner Martin.
I've heard that the opening game was moved from Friday to Thursday.
Of this week? Next week.
Next week. So it was, I believe, supposed to be on the 16th. I guess FHSAA did not have any refs available and was moved to the 15th.
I've not got that email from them.
But I
But it may have come
I
out
would
today.
confirm,
Yeah.
but I believe that's what's coming out.
But there is also, thank for that, there's a pep rally this Friday in the gym The girls volleyball team is going to do like a blue and gold exhibition game, and it's like a kickoff to all the fall season. So they would love for everybody to come out. This is a community pep rally, so they'll have music, the cheerleaders, the whole thing. So come on out and support. You're to be supporting the volleyball team, the football team, all of fall sports, golf.
When is this?
This Friday, and I want to say it's at 6 o'clock. I'll confirm that. I have not been able. I saw a. Oh, there's. No, I saw a flyer, but then I can't find it. We have too many forums. I couldn't find it again. So, is that it? That concludes my comment. Citizen comment? Come on down.
Hi, I'm Brandy Owen, and I just want to say thank you for the utility company and the storm work. That's always great. Close this?
Yeah.
And I had a question for Dallas. That PCA reduction, is that the same as the fuel adjustment charge on my bill? So can you guarantee that goes down, or is that influx with the price of fuel?
Finish out this is public comment. It's not really
And
Q&A.
also, I had another question about, Mr. Coleman said if we decrease the depreciation by 60%, if that number was something like 200,000, which I think I calculated is like 300,000, it'd be a different story. 260%.
Right.
And I believe that number would be close to 300,000. Now, I could think of better ways to spend 300,000 than raising our rates 10, 16, 18.5% again. And that's not that big of a number when you think of these new houses. It's going to affect our lower income house, what people in older houses, less energy efficient. It's going to affect them more. So I'm looking at my light bill right now, $400. It's down from $7 because I've done a lot of repairs and done a lot of things like that. But if we're raising 20% a year, I mean, nearly 20% a year, we're going to be up there with GRU in no time. I think it's going to hurt the people already hurting. I think it's not going to help them to raise it that much. And if we could kind of like not do that, that'd be great. Also, so at the 2% electric thing, so you can't guarantee the PCA reduction.
We'll answer that question after you get done with your comment.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay. Have a seat, and then he can come back up.
Got shocked. Mr. Mayor, no, of course we cannot guarantee a reduction. When there was a war in Ukraine, obviously fuel prices went up. This is, like everything in our budget, our best estimate based off the information we have from FMPA. Their rate projections for next year are lower. They're showing a reduction in their cost to the city.
All right. Thank you, sir. Any other public comment?
You want more?
No, ma'am. Everybody gets one time.
Well, reclaim my time?
We can talk after that. Then we are. Oh, come on down.
Janine Marinak, and I would like to let everyone know that, and let me put an asterisk on everyone, over 16, over 110 pounds, that this coming Thursday from 2 to 7 p.m., the One Blood Bloodmobile will be right here in Berry Park, which is between the pharmacy and the municipal building, taking donations. You do not have to be a city employee to give. Anyone over 16 years old and 110 pounds can give blood. Every donor will get at least a $20 e-gift card, a One Blood tote bag, and of course the usual wellness checkup where they take your pulse and all that good stuff. And that's for the general public. I'm not going to tell you what employees might get. But anyway, so that's it. I would like to encourage everyone to donate.
Did you set that up, Janine?
The Personnel Committee compared the two blood banks and their benefits, decided on One Blood, and then from that point on, I was
Out of curiosity, why One Blood?
the donor benefits are much higher than Life South.
Yes, okay. The reason I'm asking this is because at my other job, I was a wellness champion, and I used Life South for the longest time, and then the reason I had it at the time before becoming a commissioner, changed to One Blood, was because they use the blood to the military. I don't know if anybody knew that.
They like give it, donate it to
Yes,
the.
so it's, yes.
They
military
supply, they currently supply 100% of North Florida regionals,
base. Yep.
I think 100% of the VA, and they're up to about half of UF Shands.
More local than
Well,
wide.
But yeah, as far as how much blood.
And military.
There has been an incident in the past 2 weeks where one blood donations stopped completely statewide. That has been resolved, and they will be out here Thursday. And because of that situation, they are behind. There were surgeries canceled, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So they need donors.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, we are adjourned.
I didn't believe it. Man, I had you got pretty good.
Absolutely. Appreciate you staying late.
I didn't eat high school? Yeah, he was shooting over that little Larry Bird. Yeah, there's. And that's Larry Bird was shooting. He was Larry Bird was I was over at East. I was sitting, and then in the shots and look at it. Like, where's